So I grew up in the southern part of India in a town called Pondicherry. And I was the first son. We had two siblings in our house. And our parents, neither of them went to what I call college. And my dad was working in a hospital as a medical technician. And my mom was a stay-home mom. After they got married, they decided that, hey, putting their kids through a great school and giving them education is the first priority for them, right? Just to give you a perspective, my dad was probably making about 100 rupees a month. And they decided to take 60 out of that 100 rupees and say, this is for my son's school fees, uniform, books, and all that stuff, right? And the remaining 40 is how the whole family is going to live for the whole month. So that's how we grew up in India. Food was a secondary priority in our house because education was the first priority. I don't know much about the US. All my knowledge is some books and some movies kind of thing. So I get a letter from Louisiana State University that says, hey, we've given you admission, we've given you financial aid, come on over kind of thing. And I look at the address and it says blah, 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 blah. And then it says LA. And I say, hey, LA is exciting, man. I've seen LA in movies. I've seen, cars. I've seen tall buildings. LA must be exciting, okay? So I really had that feeling when I left India. I take the flight. I'm sort of, near landing. I look at it and say, hey, where are the tall buildings? LA is supposed to have a lot of tall buildings. There's no tall buildings here. And then the school had an Indian association, student association. So they had sent somebody from that to pick me up from the airport. That guy comes and says, I said, hey, where are all the tall buildings? Isn't this LA? And he really laughed. He started laughing and laughing and laughing. And only then I realized that, hey, the city LA is different from state LA kind of thing, okay? But LSU or Louisiana State University was a fantastic environment in that, it was sort of a very diverse, global, student population, right? Because I'd done electronics engineering in undergrad. And then I started falling in love with computer science. And LSU gave me the opportunity to to get a degree from, electrical and computer engineering, but do enough coursework in computer science that I could have a career in computer science, in software. So one thing I decided the summer that I was graduating, hey, everybody talks about getting a job. I can go do a PhD. Should I try for a job? Should I study? What should I do, right? So I literally went to two newspapers, okay? San Jose Mercury News and Boston Globe. Okay, those are the two newspapers that I looked at and said, hey, what are all the technology companies that seem interesting? So I scoured through those newspapers, back issues, current issues, every issue that I could find, and said, hey, let me identify 100 companies, okay, that I'm going to apply. And I applied that summer. This is now summer of 1988. There are only two companies that wanted to have a conversation. The first one is IBM. And then towards the end of September or early October, I get a call from my former roommate in LSU. He said, hey, I don't know this company, but there is some company called Microsoft that just called for you here because, you had given them your, LSU address or LSU phone number here. So I have a conversation with them. And then the first thing they say is hey, we want you to fly out to Seattle to interview with us. And this was the DOS group calling me for interviews. So I come here and then from morning 8 till evening 6, it's every hour there's an interview. And the interviews those days were all hey, go to the whiteboard, I'll give you a problem, code it or solve it or do whatever it is. So it is one after the other, right? I go through all the interviews and I actually think I've done well, okay? I'm sort of optimistic, I'm positive. And then Microsoft says hey, we want to take you out for dinner. I said, I'm excited even more. I go for dinner. And back then it was sort of common knowledge, at least for Microsoft, that hey, if you're going to get an offer, you'll get an offer end of the day. And if you don't you don't get an offer end of the day, chances are you're not getting an offer. So I'm through dinner, I'm waiting. The dinner is over and everybody's saying goodbye and there's no talk about an offer. So I go back to Buffalo. 1 week goes by, no response. And I'm pinging the recruiter saying hey, any news? Because they haven't even said no. They haven't said yes, they haven't said no. And then 2 weeks later, the recruiter calls up and says, like, hey, Soma, the DOS group that you interviewed with, they've decided not to hire a fresher. They want somebody with more experience. Okay. But because you did well in the interviews, I thought, like, hey, let me check with some of the teams. And there is a team called the OS2 team that seems interested in wanting to talk to you. Would you be interested? I don't know much about DOS. I don't know much about OS2. I said Microsoft. No. So why Microsoft? Okay, becomes an important thing. There are two things that I fell in love with when I came here the first time for interviews. The first is, everybody talks about Microsoft's mission and vision and all that stuff, right? The notion that, Microsoft was thinking about democratizing computing and thinking about, hey, we really want to have a desktop on every desk in every home. That just seemed like an amazing sort of vision. I really loved that. Okay. And the second thing is, every interviewer that I had, I thought they were incredibly smart. Incredibly smart. All of these people seem to be way smarter than I, way more knowledgeable about like software and how to build systems. I would love to be part of this environment so that I can learn more and I can thrive and do well. So for those two reasons, I was really excited about. I moved here, and January 23, 1989 is when I started the OS2 team. I was a software design engineer in test, okay, in OS2, and focused on memory management and then file systems. So sort of kernel-related areas in OS2, okay? That's what I was doing, okay? And so for a year, I think we tried our best. Okay, Microsoft put in a full-faith effort, a full-fledged effort to make this OS2 work. And we were working on two different versions of OS2 in parallel. We were working on OS2 1.2, 1.3, something like that, to fix some bugs in the previous version, while at the same time working on the next big version of OS2 that we call OS2 2.0. Within 6 months of me joining Microsoft, there's more talks internally that hey, this is not a right path. We need to figure out what our path is going to be, where we control more of our own destiny as far as operating systems go. What Microsoft had done towards the end of 1988, early 1989, Microsoft had hired a group of people, Dave Cutler, and probably about 10 more people or 10 to 12 more people from Deck West. It was fascinating because they are one of the best programmers, software people that I've come across in my life. And for a year, they did not write software. Okay. So what did they do? They really designed NT, what became known as NT later on, right? And they wrote a spec. So they wrote literally 1,000 pages of documentation for what this product could be and should be, assuming Microsoft lets us build it. Right. In fact, I used to joke for a long time, there was the first, best, and last spec that we wrote. Because after that, it was all amending little here and there kind of thing. But the discipline that Dave and his team had to really write down what we were going to build was hugely valuable for us during the project. Right. So end of 88, Microsoft decides to greenlight NT. So I was one of the first people to get drafted to be part of the NT project. And this was in 1990 March. And then it took us 3.5 more years before we shipped the first version of NT. My role changed considerably during that period. Okay, I moved from OS2 to NT, same role, which is software design engineer in test in the kernel. Again, working on file systems. In NT, it was starting with file systems and then to other parts of the kernel. And then I became a test lead. And then I became a test manager by the time we shipped the product. They were all amazingly passionate about birthing that first product. And remember, until then, most of the operating systems for personal computers were 16-bit. We were going to build a 32-bit operating system. We were going to build a portable operating system that can go to different hardware architectures. And we were building it from scratch. If you remember, the average age of a Microsoft employee back in those days was mid to high 20s. So people had the flexibility, the freedom, the passion, and the energy to do what I call superhuman or unnatural things to be able to get such a product of that magnitude coming together and getting it done kind of thing. And that's the thing that I remember the most about my first 5 years at Microsoft. The NT group back then felt like a family. Not that we always liked each other or we agreed with each other or we didn't fight with each other kind of thing, but it felt like, hey, we are one family trying to birth this incredible product that's going to have an impact way beyond what we can imagine. I was in NT right from day one, okay? Went through shipping NT 3.1, NT 3.5, 3.51, 4.0, and then NT 5, which became Windows 2000. And then Windows XP, and then Windows Server 2003. So we had just shipped or about to ship 2003 when I get a call from Eric Rudder. He said, I want you to come and run developer division. Developers are really the cornerstone for Microsoft. It's sort of the center of the universe, right? We've always been a platform company. And by definition, that means you need developers excited about what we are building. And if they are not there, you're not going to be there. So to me, getting a chance to be at what I call the center of the universe for Microsoft and be able to work on tools and technologies and services that is going to be helpful for the developer community felt like an amazing mission. I would say one thing that I'm really, really proud of what I did at Microsoft is the work that I did to enable distributed development. The theory was hey, we are such an amazing company that no matter where you are in the world, if you are super smart and we want you at Microsoft, you would love to come to Redmond, okay? And we can get you here. And I felt that hey, that is fine for now, but if we really sort of get to some level of scale, that model is not going to work, okay? We need to go to where people are. And given that I'm from India, I'm always a little biased about hey, India has got so many computer science people that are coming out and people who are proficient with the language. Why not go there? And some people can come here and I'm okay with that. But not everybody is going to want to come here. Why don't we tap into those people, right? So I remember in 1995, I started talking to my manager, and then whenever I get a chance with Bill, we'll talk about this a little bit. Fast forward to 1997 March. Bill goes to India. That is Bill's first ever visit to India. He goes there for a week. He comes back and then he quickly writes a note saying, I just came back from India. I'm so impressed that they got so many smart people. My first reaction is, which world are you living in? Okay. But then he quickly came back and said hey, what I really mean is, I know that all the Indian employees that we have here are super smart people. So I knew that there are smart people, but I just didn't expect them in such quantities. So very impressed. I took that as an opportunity to say hey, Bill has opened the door a little. Let's go push on. Hey, should we set up a R&D center in India? It took a few more months, okay, of sort of talking back and forth, working. And Paul Murridge was back then in the company, and Paul Murridge was in my chain kind of thing. So through Paul and Bill kind of thing. So finally, Bill said okay, you've been bugging me enough on this. I'll give you the permission to go start a R&D center, and I'll give you 20 headcount. And I wasn't sure what we would do there. So I had to before I asked everybody else, I said let me identify one project that is happening in my world that maybe could be a project that I do out of India. And then I can go ask somebody else for a second project. So the very first project that I had picked was something called Services for Unix. This is in Hyderabad. Okay. You fast forward today, we got about 15,000 people, fast going to 20,000 people. And it is just the amount of growth, the kind of products they are working on for Microsoft, the impact they are having on Microsoft is just been phenomenal. So I feel really, really proud of what I was able to do there. And it has been a long journey. It's not like an overnight success kind of thing, right? But today what Microsoft is doing in terms of tapping into people around the world, not just here, whether it is India, because at one point in time, I was managing the R&D center in India, in China, in Israel, in Vancouver, in Boston, in the Valley, in pretty much a lot of the distributed development work we were doing. Just being able to open the eyes of the company to say hey, there is another way to get access to the best talent. Let's build this muscle and discipline for what it means to have teams in different parts of the geography, different time zones, and still be able to work collaboratively, what is working, what is not working, and get it to a level of scale and success that is integral today to Microsoft success, I feel extremely good about my role and journey in that. There are two things that I say I'm sort of proud of and excited about, and I hope that people think about it when they think about me. One is the distributed development, or what we did in terms of opening Microsoft's ability to go after and get the best people from around the world and know that we have a development model that works and makes it effective and successful for us, kind of thing. The second thing, and this is what I also learned while I was at Microsoft, which is it takes a village to do anything. There's almost nothing you're going to do by yourself, right? So you need to learn how to take bets on people, how to enable people, how to empower people, and how to create an environment where people can do their very best. If you can do that, then you're going to be a successful leader. If you can't do that, you're going to be a successful individual, not necessarily a leader. Okay? And you fast forward to today. Today, I'm sort of outside Microsoft. I'm a venture capitalist by day, and by night, I have a few other things that I'm doing, but I'm a venture capitalist, right? That's what I do. Day in and day out, I have to take a bet on hey, is this the entrepreneur I want to bet my next 10 years, next 15 years with resources and time? And if I do a good job there, I'm going to be an amazing venture capitalist. If not, I'm going to be a lousy venture capitalist, right? So to me, whether you're working in a company or whether you're outside, doing a startup, or whether you're an investor, it's all about ensuring that you know how to take bets on the right people at the right point in time. And more importantly, once you take the bet, you create an environment for them to do their very best.